And here we go. Wednesday night once again. Welcome to a new month. Welcome to September, everyone. Am I too low? I better back up a little bit. I thought I had that. Okay, good enough. There we go. Hi there. Welcome everybody to once again to Cast Iron Wednesday, a long-running tradition that a lot of YouTube channels have been doing for the past several years. We've been doing a cast iron video on Wednesday, not necessarily every Wednesday, although I've been trying to do one every Wednesday when possible, and I seem to be one of the few that like doing a live video about cast iron on Wednesday. And that, of course, is because I and I'm probably foolish in that I actually do live cooking on each Wednesday or almost every Wednesday. Tonight is actually not going to be more of a discussion night than a cooking night. But yes, that's really why they call it Cast Iron Wednesday, because well, a lot of these cooking channels, we have made something of a tradition of it because it's a lot of fun to do. I mean, obviously, as you can see, I've got a thing about cast iron, and I've spent at least the last 3 years on Cast Iron Wednesday, pretty much explaining and demonstrating why I love cooking in cast iron. And part of the reason for it, of course, is really all of you folks who have been not kind enough. Oh, maybe I'm a little too close. All of you folks who have been kind enough to show up here each week for Cast Iron Wednesday, because, well, a lot of us do consider it to be a lot of fun. And so that's why there are a lot of familiar names now that I'm more than happy to welcome back here once again. Names, like Celine77 and Cynthia Wesley. And hello, Christine Borgatti, and hello, Rich Qualls and Terry Sinchef, and hello, Cast Iron Fanatic. Yes, happy Cast Iron Wednesday, and hello to Rocket Caver, who I understand scored himself a really nice Griswold round griddle that I understand had a little chip out of the rim, and so as a result, he got a big steal on it. So congratulations on that. And hello to everyone, Pat Z, and Cynthia and Silva 579 and RT Scott and so many regular folks here. So thank you very much to everybody who's been kind enough to show up here every week, and thank you also to everyone who may be showing up here for the first time. And really, that's what we're here for tonight, just to have some fun hanging out and chatting about cast iron. The first, we've made it something of a tradition that the first Cast Iron Wednesday of each month is more or less a Q&A session. This is basically a hobnob discussion where we do our best to try to stump each other with questions and answers about cast iron, because it's a lot of fun. I like showing off my huge rack here because I like to think there seems to be no end to the number of stories that these pieces can tell, and the information that they can give. And I find it interesting, and I'm hoping a lot of other folks find it interesting. Which is why, as well as I say, thank you also, CE Rums, and thank you for being here. If not for you, I wouldn't be here. I'm almost certain about that. And William Hurt and Papa Dan as well. And that's why I guess I should actually start off, I think, by showing off something that I only acquired last weekend. And in fact, it's just cooled off now. I've had it seasoning for pretty much most of the day during work, which is one reason why it is like about 85 degrees here in my living room tonight, because we've got this heat wave, and I've decided to do some cast iron seasoning. But on the other hand, you folks might want to see this. So let's see let's see. I'm sure some folks may be able to recognize this, especially based on the handle, which, as you know, is a pretty generic handle shape for pans like this that were made during the late 1800s. And here's the gate mark on it as well. And the interesting thing about this is a number 9 size, not an 8, not a 6, not a 5. This is actually larger than most, and it's still in a fairly intact condition as well. It's also very deep. I'm not sure if this could be considered a chicken fryer or not, but I'd have to say this thing's probably deeper than your typical cast iron skillet. So this is a really nice piece here. Yes, this is one of those generic They just call them fancy handle yeah, gate mark skillets because because this came from any number of manufacturers during that time who made these pans as part of accessory sets, the kind of things you would get if you bought a wood burning stove. I mean, wood burning stoves, as you know, well, naturally they changed the way we cook. They changed the way our kitchens and homes were designed. They became a huge fad all across the United States, starting around the later 1800s, going all the way, well, to today, really. And so retailers were really crazy to sell these stoves in any way they could. That's why for a lot of them, when you purchased a wood burning stove, you got a free complimentary set of cast iron pots and pans to go with it to help decorate your stove in your kitchen. You'd usually get something like, oh, like say a frying pan like this, a skillet, maybe a second skillet, maybe a griddle, maybe a kettle, those kind of things there. And the manufacturers generally considered these to be, I guess you could say, extra pieces. And not important enough that they even bothered putting their names on them. So that's why these things here almost never seem to have a manufacturer's name on them. I did a little short piece on this, in fact, for YouTube and TikTok about a month or so ago, and I got a lot of flack from people because I use the term disposable to describe these kind of pans. I mean, after all, as I said, as far as the retailers and the sellers and the manufacturers were concerned, these things here were essentially just giveaway pieces, the kind of extras you threw in when because they really weren't that important. They were there, they were made as cheaply as possible to appeal to the customers and, of course, got them to buy the stove. And so I use the term disposable because, in that respect, as far as the manufacturers were concerned, I would say that they were considered to be disposable. I mean, I realized that when people bought cast iron pans, they were not considered to be disposable and they were essentials in their family. But even then, I mean, in those days, they were still considered to be frying pans, very nice frying pans, the kind of frying pans that would last a lifetime and that people would often pass down to their descendants, but still frying pans, the kind of things that when, say, during the scrap iron drives in World War I and World War II, when they were calling for people to donate junk and scrap, especially iron, oftentimes what they ended up donating. They ended up donating that old frying pan from the kitchen, and that's one of the reasons why so many of those pans were lost in those days, but also why they were considered to be, yes, I will say it again, disposable. Even so, of course, any number of these, I mean, nowadays especially, they are considered, I mean, they're real heirlooms here. This is one of those lost American antiques. And anyway, okay, I've said enough about this. And the reason why I'm so excited about it is because, in fact, this, I realize, is the perfect piece to take on my road trip next month. When, as I mentioned, I am going on a road trip to New Jersey to especially to a book signing to for the new cookbook being released by Tasting History. And I feel like this would be the perfect thing to take with me on a road trip. And so, anyway, I've talked enough about this particular pan here when I'm supposed to be taking questions. So I do apologize about that. How much did you pick up the number nine for? I'll be honest, I paid a lot more than I normally would for a cast iron pan because I figured this was one of those once in a lifetime scores. And I ended up paying $40 for it. Yeah, I admit it. I kind of overspent, I think, especially since a lot of times when you find these gate mark pieces in flea markets and the like, you can often get them for next to nothing. $2, $5, $10. But I decided to pay the $40 largely because I don't know when, if ever, I'm going to find another gate mark number 9 size piece anytime at all in my lifetime. Who can say when I would come across something like this? So, and especially since, as I said, I thought this is the perfect thing to take on my road trip next month. So I felt this was the type of thing that, to me at least, I thought it was worth paying the extra price for, or at least that was my opinion for it. So Rocket Caber. We also picked up a Gate Mark fancy handle griddle, $10. Well, congratulations on that. Do you know much about European cast iron from the 18th century? I know very, very little about it, I'm sorry to say. I really, unfortunately, have not done a lot of research into that area, unfortunately. So there's not much I can say about European cast iron from the 1800s or the 1700s or anything like that. I'm sorry about that, but I'll be completely honest. So, I mean, is as much as I'm proud to own a 15-gallon cauldron from the USA in the 1800s, that's about as far as my extent goes. So, Pat Z, I love watching Tasting History. Yes. And William Hurt, I got my Gatemark pan for less than $10, and that's exactly what I mean. In most circumstances, I mean, as I said, this is a wonderful pan. I probably would have passed it up if not for this opportunity, because I've got this collection here. I mean, this is normally the type of thing, especially with a $40 price tag, I would look at it and say, nice piece, then put it down and go somewhere else. But I felt I had a reason to get this at this price. So it's not that I'm trying to justify it. It's more like I think that's really the reason why I went and paid that amount of money for it. So for that reason, I'm not regretting it. But on the other hand, in most instances, if you come across a pan like this, I probably would not recommend paying $40 for it, unless maybe it's something really, really unusual, like a number 9 size, for instance. I mean, those number 8, number 7, and number 6 size gate mark pans are actually pretty common even today, because even though they were disposable, throwaway type of pans, as far as the manufacturers were concerned, a fair number of them have survived to the present day because, of course, they were made from cast iron. So, in other words, I probably might pay $10 to $20 for a gate mark number 8 size skillet of this kind, for instance, if I came across it at a flea market or an antique store. Not much more than that. This, as I felt, was an exception, and that was really my choice there. So, yeah, and I'm certainly, and I'm still not regretting it for that reason there. So, Big Valley Antiques, Reedsville, Pennsylvania, bought a couple at the Belledale sale. Old Gape Mark griddle and a BSR eight slice cornbread pan. Well, that sounds good, Mark. It sounds like you had yourself a good time scoring in everyone. And hello, Papa Dan. Couldn't get a connection until now. Well, glad to see you here. I would have paid $40. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think this is probably unique enough that it might be worth the price if you feel you have a need for it. In this case, I feel like I did have a need for it. And that is probably where a lot of these exceptions come from. I mean, it's the reason why those cast iron vendors at Brimfield, by the way, Brimfield is going on this week, and it's going to be going on in Massachusetts until this coming Sunday. So, but yeah, that's the reason why you've got these vendors there at places like Brimfield or the like that set up their stands and sell their incredible cast iron pans at incredible prices. I mean, granted, it's hard for them to make a profit because, obviously not a lot of people are going to find them, but every so often, maybe someone might actually feel that they do have a need to pay that kind of a price for a pan like that. And I probably wouldn't blame them for that reason. So even though I've said a lot of harsh things about antique malls, and I'm not taking them back, I'm not going back on my words. I've often said that I feel a lot of cast iron at antique malls is overpriced. A lot of cast iron pans on eBay are overpriced, and generally, I would not recommend paying that kind of a price for something that really you could find at if as long as you're patient. that you could really get for a much more decent price. I mean, I've shown off. How many times have I shown off now, for instance, one of my all-time favorite kitchen users, this good old BSR Red Mountain number 8, um, which these days, if you find it at an antique mall, and probably especially if they recognize it and call it a BSR, how much do you think they would probably have for a price tag on this? 60, $70? And I would not pay 60 or $70 for something for a wonderful Red Mountain skillet like this. I certainly didn't pay 60 or $70. That's the type of thing that I'm really not fond of. That happens all the time, unfortunately, at antique malls and antique vendors and cast iron vendors as well. And I wouldn't be surprised, in fact, if there are a couple of people watching me right now on this video, and what I'm saying might even kind of like, they might take it personally. I'm not meaning to be personal against any of these people, of course. But the thing is, these kind of, I guess you could call them everyday antique vintage cast iron pans. I wouldn't want to pay that kind of a price for it, because I've learned in the past 13 years now that what you need is patience. You just have to keep on going on the hunt, because I mean, eventually over time, you will one of these days find that really, really great score you're looking for, and you might end up eventually with something like this. I mean, that's what I mean. It's like a BSR handwritten number 7, a BSR 7S, a BSR Red Mountain 8, that kind of thing, or even my other gate mark pan, which I've already told. Oh, I watch myself, and I've shown a lot of people off, and folks probably recognize this. I did a video about this one just last week. Lucky number 7. This is my number 7 size gate mark pan. This is the one that I had repaired by a welder about 10 years or so ago. And he did an awesome job. I mean, you can barely see, if I hold it up the right way in the light, you might be able to see the actual welder's mark where he repaired it. But he did an outstanding job on that. And I've been using this especially as my cornbread pan for the past 10 years. And I didn't pay $40 for this. Yeah, I think I might have paid $10 for this, which is kind of like the point I'm making as I'm rambling on and on and on here. Have patience. Eventually, you will find something good. Just about everybody here in this in this chat who has been going on the hunt in one way or another, we all have our stories to tell about a great score that we made. And congratulations to all of you for finding a great score in some way or another. In fact, if you want to mention these things in the chat, I mean, feel free to do so. Like if someone maybe found it, inherited a pan from their grandmother, or they found a rusty pan in a barn or something. I mean, feel free to mention things like that. So, um, but yes, it's things like that that will happen to you, because it's really not that uncommon. But what it does take is patience. That's the best thing I could say. I mean, if you don't want to spend a lot on your collection of cast iron, then what you need is patience. And I'm not saying anything that we don't know already either. So, uh, Rich Qualls, do you have any experience with cabin, kitchen, and WKM cast iron? WKM, I know for a fact, is made in Taiwan cast iron. It's the same company that made those wooden handled saucepans that we see all over the place. The ones that were sold in the U.S. through Finger Hut, the ones that you could still find at Savers, at flea markets, at antique malls, and all that. And they plainly have a Taiwan mark on them. And I'm somewhere they do say what WKM means, and I honestly don't remember what it is. For a brief period of time, I'm not sure if this was the 1980s or so, some of them had a tiny little picture of a tank on them. WKM, and just a tiny little thing of a tank. And I don't know why it was a tank. It's not like they made it for the military or anything like that. But nonetheless, a few of them did, in fact, have make those pants. And naturally, collectors usually shy away from them for the same reason you know very well why. They're made in Asia. So, as far as the collector's market is concerned, they're worthless. Um, about a year ago at Brimfield, in fact, I came across a number 3 size skillet that looked exactly like a BSR. It had the handle of a BSR, the size of a BSR, except that was by WKM and it had a Taiwan mark on it. So somebody commented that it's possible WKM may have bought some of the patterns from BSR when the company went out of business. Maybe they did. But I mean, that was the first time I'd seen it. And in a way, I'm almost kind of bummed that maybe I should have picked it up. But I don't know. I mean, it was nice to see, but I mean, I've got enough of them. It's not like I really need every single pan ever made. so, so yeah, WKM, as I mentioned, is Taiwan made. Do you still have that number 13 spider lid? Yes, I do. In fact, let me dig that out for you. Yeah, that's one other thing I'm proud of, especially laying my collection out, is that most of them I can grab pretty easily. Ugh. No, this isn't the one. This is a 19th century 12 spider lid. Here it is. Ugh. Okay. And here's the number 10 Griswold lid. Here we are. Ugh. And as you asked, there it is. The 13, as you can see, it says 13 inches A, which A obviously would be like the mold ID mark or something like that. And this is definitely a Red Mountain BSR camp lid. And yeah, there sure are a lot of pock marks on this, aren't there? So yeah, you can bet this thing here got a lot of use. Maybe it was used a lot with coals, the kind of coals that had sulfur in them, and this all of these pock marks on the top could be sulfur damage, or maybe it might have had extreme rust. If I remember right, when I scored this one, I believe it was on eBay, in fact. I do believe it was rusty when I first received it, and I took the time to clean it up. But I really couldn't say if these pock marks are from rust or sulfur damage or what. However, the underside of this is really, I mean, as you can see, is really spotless. And that kind of makes me think that this might, in fact, be sulfur damage, from poorly made charcoal from those days. Because if it was rust, then you'd think that there would be a lot of pock marks on the bottom of this lid as well, but there aren't. Anyway, yeah, this is a very unusual size, 13A. I could very well spend the rest of my life looking for the bottom part of this, either the camp oven or the spider that fits this. Who knows? Maybe I'll find it one of these days. That's how the hunt goes. But the funny thing about this is this thing fits almost perfectly on my solid Technics 30 centimeter big skillet. Also, because they made these things with pretty much the exact size, namely that when it says 13 inches, you can almost guarantee that the rim underneath is in fact about 12 inches across. And any spider from the 19th century that might say 13 inches, this thing would almost certainly fit on it. It does not have the unique size that BSR had on their kitchen indoor skillets and Dutch ovens. This is a much more generic size. In fact, I think I posted that about a month ago, was it? Somebody was selling a combo set, a 19th century spider with a BSR 13. Was it a 13? I think it might have been a 12 lid. But either way, so yeah. Anyway, as I said, this is in fact the BSR camp oven lid. I have no intention of getting rid of this. I have been able to use it once in a while, so I'm actually happy about that. And it does have the regular handle too, When BSR started making their, using their DISA production, their automated production in the 1960s or so, that's when they started making their camp oven lids, in particular with those awful tab handles, because it was a cost-cutting measure. So anyway, here's the 13 lid. Oh, let me put this back and let's get on with more questions. Thank you very much for asking questions, because it gives me an excuse to keep on talking here. Do you know what sizes the BSR and 3-notch Lodge's chicken fryers were made in? Only seen 7 and 8 in BSR and 8 and 10 in 3-notch Lodge. I believe in fact that was all they made for those chicken fryers. They only made them in the 7 and the 8 size with BSR. Okay, there are exceptions, but almost all of them in BSR were made in that size, the 7 and the 8. Every once in a while, every few months or so, on the Facebook group for BSR collectors, somebody posts a picture of a number 10 size Red Mountain chicken fryer, and that thing is huge. But it could very well, and then an argument always breaks out over that thing, because no, they couldn't have been made by BSR because they didn't make them in that size. Maybe during the early days of the Red Mountain series, the 1920s, 1930s, maybe they might have produced a few of them perhaps, but stopped making them because, making a big pot like that would obviously be very expensive, and it may not have been worth the cost to keep producing them. So it's entirely possible that maybe there are a few of them out there. But in general, you are correct. Generally, it would be the number 7 and number 8 size for BSR. I'm told, if I kind of remember right, I believe there was a number 7 size chicken fryer with Lodge as well. But the chicken fryers were pretty much 1, maybe 2 sizes. They were nowhere near as versatile as all of these different sizes for their skillets. Okay, let's see. I'd gift a nice heavy BSR Wagner Lodge old stuff with YouTube instructions on seasoning and cleaning. Well, that sounds pretty good. I saw the upload on Mud's Repair. He did a great job with welding the handle. Oh, I missed that actually. Was this last night? Because I hadn't seen it yet. So I guess Mud Brooker, he must have repaired an old cast iron pan. Oh, congratulations for that. That means at least he'll get some more life out of that. I know I have Jimmy Langford. I have beat up on the antique shops over the years, but the last thing I bought there was the lamb mold for $35, even in good shape. Well, then you got yourself a good score then. Yeah. And I've done the same thing. I beat up on eBay all the time. I've posted videos about how eBay cast iron sucks. And yet I do have a few pieces in my collection that I managed to score from eBay. Once again, you need patience more than anything else, and a little bit of knowledge also helps. It was from eBay that I managed to score the number 8 BSR handwritten or hand scribed Dutch oven that I'm quite happy with. What else have I gotten from eBay? I think I mentioned my life lesson early in my cast iron days when I was obsessed with trying to get myself a Griswold, and then I paid through the nose and got a Griswold number 10. Yeah, a large logo Griswold number 10 skillet, and I paid through the nose for this thing. And then I went to Brimfield for the very first time for about 2 weeks. Yeah, only about 2 weeks later, and saw this very pan selling there at Brimfield for half of what I paid for it on eBay. That was my life lesson, and that was when I learned. Have patience. Don't just simply grab the first thing you find, because there is the possibility you could get a better score later on. And that, of course, is the curse of the hunt, because you never know, am I going to find that kind of a score later on? Which comes back again to my number 9 gate mark skillet that I just showed off. I decided, I don't know when, if ever, I'll find a number 9 gate mark skillet, and I feel I've got a need for it. So that's why I ended up paying for it. And right now I feel like I did the right thing. So that's the type of feeling you should have when you get cast iron, regardless of whether you pay $2, $20, or $200, which is what I paid for my big cauldron, for instance. That's really the thing. I mean, this stuff here, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Namely, that we don't have to have all of this wonderful vintage stuff. We could buy it all brand new at Walmart, for instance, because they're cast iron pans. That's the thing about why is Yeti selling a $400 cast iron pan when you can buy one at Walmart for 20 bucks? I mean, that's the thing. We've got our reasons for it, and there's really nothing else we could say. We have our reasons. Maybe, I mean, we love vintage, we love the quality, we love the fact that it's made in the USA. uh, we love owning it, we love having a really nice collection. You can't deny that. I'm proud of my collection. I've got this video channel here just to show off my collection, so yes. And whenever I get a piece from my collection, and I'm still doing that, it's like if I find myself saying, man, I am so glad I got this, then that makes it worth it. No matter how much or how little I paid for it, whether I paid $5 for this, no, I paid $10 for this. A number 3 slant logo Griswold. So yeah, I got a good score on that. But whether I paid $10 for that, or whether I got the come on, come on, you know what? Eh, good enough. Or whether I paid full price, which was $15, for the 20th anniversary National Cornbread Festival skillet. As I mean, I do not feel bad about getting these things. And so that, in at least for me, definitely justifies it. And I would hope it would justify it for you too. Because, it's your collection. You really don't need a justification for it, do you? Well, okay. And here I am saying again, maybe I'm just trying to use this as an excuse. I'm telling myself again and again, I don't want to be a hoarder. I mean, heck, in my own neighborhood, I've only realized I go on my regular morning walks, and there are two separate houses right within my area that unfortunately I can only say that hoarders live there. It's like the entire house is full of junk. The garage is full of trash. It's a sad sight that it could be condemned. That kind of thing, and I feel bad about that. Heck, my own dad was a hoarder like that, and we didn't even realize it until after he passed on. But for things like that, I'm telling myself, I have a collection like this, but I don't want to be a hoarder. And that again comes down to, as I said, the good feeling I have of having a collection like this and feeling glad whenever I get a nice cast iron pan and thinking, I don't regret what I spent on this. Maybe that's what it comes down to. And I really did not intend for this to be some kind of a sermon, especially about how it's okay to spend big amounts of money on vintage cast iron or anything like that. I mean, I'm just ranting off the cuff here. I'm pretty much saying what comes to mind and speaking my opinion. And I hope you folks aren't bored by that. So, I you showed off a Bob Dobbs pan recently. Where can I get one? And praise Bob. Praise Bob indeed. And yes, you're talking about this. And as you can see, I have indeed put it through some use. Praise Bob. Here is the great J.R. Bob Dobbs. And where can you get one? Let's just say Etsy is a really nice place, and I'll leave it at that. So yeah, I mean, I've already told the origin of this pan. And for all you know, I could be lying about that. After all, the story I told you was that I used this pan to deflect a meteor strike, and it left this scar on the pan that happened to look like J.R. Bob Dobbs. Does that sound outrageous? Well, I don't know. There are a lot of religious tales that sound pretty outrageous. But anyway, that's my story for this pan, and I'm sticking to it. On the other hand, Etsy is a nice place to go to. And again, I think that should probably drop enough of a hint about that, I think. So that 13-inch lid may have had chicken pox. Yeah. Best worst pun I've heard today, Terry. I know I beat up on the antique shops. Yeah, we said that part. I said that part already. So let me. Okay, let me just make sure I'm not missing anything from you folks, because you folks are again a very important reason for having these. I thought that was Bob Barker. Shit. I'm sure Bob Barker probably knew Bob Dobbs at some point in the past, and yeah, R.I.P. Rest in peace, Bob Barker. We all have great memories of him. We all have memories of being home from school during the 70s and 80s, being homesick. And during the morning, of course, when you were homesick, you had to watch The Price is Right on TV, because that was the only thing that was on other than those stupid soap operas. Okay. Will you please fix your mic? It comes in clear when you face the right side, then goes out. Oh dear. Is my mic having problems? Okay, I think I better adjust that then. I wasn't aware. So far, this mic has generally been pretty reliable. So, I mean, if I'm starting to have problems with this mic, yeah, please tell me that. I will adjust it as best as I can. Let me, in fact, it's falling off now. So let me put this on as best as I can. But thank you for telling me that. There we go. Anyway, does this sound okay? Sound all right, folks? Sound real good now. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Anyway, well, thank you again. Let's see what we have here. Etsy is better pricing on cast iron than eBay. Not by much, but the sellers are also cast iron users and aficionados. Yeah, there is that. There are some real cast iron experts there who are great sellers. I also recommend the Facebook groups, some of the Facebook groups, for selling cast iron as well. One busy place I've seen recently on Facebook is one called Patriot Cast Iron, and they've got a lot of they do a lot of regular sales there, and they're doing pretty good. There's another one that seems to be more quiet than it used to be. Iron Man Cast Iron Auctions. Both of these are Facebook groups, and those are terrific places because they do a good job policing their sites. You know, they do their best to try to watch out for ripoffs, and they're all experts. So it's not like you're going to be ripped off with a bad piece. Of course, that also means you're not likely to find a wonderful score there either. It's not like I'm selling this old rusty cast iron pan that's got this weird shape on the bottom that turns out to be a Waypack Indian logo. Nothing like that, unfortunately. But on the other hand, you're probably not going to pay $2,000 for that Waypack Indian head logo pan either. So you've got a plus and a minus. Somewhere over the. Oh, okay, now I just lost it again. Let me see. A pan with your mug on it for a souvenir would be cool. No, I don't think I'm ever going to have my picture put on a cast iron pan. Chances are the pan would probably rust prematurely if you did that. Okay, could you tell us about the Eaton skillet? Okay, let's pull this one out here. I still don't know too much about this. It's yet another thing I really need to do a lot more research on, but I found this at a flea market in Massachusetts, which is not, I guess that's not too surprising. New England is not too far away from Canada, but here it is. Yeah, T. Eaton. as it says, T. Eaton Company. Dear, what's this? Uh, depart. Department. Duh. Department, of course. Housewares department. Sheesh. Anyway, I found this, in fact, at the Grafton Flea Market in Massachusetts. I found it in the midst of a bucket that was full of those Taiwan-made saucepans. In fact, I saw. I mean, somebody had a bucket full of cast iron pieces, and just about all of them were Taiwan-made. There were a few of those wooden-handled saucepans, and yet, in the midst of all this, I just happened to notice the number 8 logo here. And I thought this number 8 was a Griswold because you can see it's got the block logo. It's got the block lettering number 8. It doesn't have a round 8. And for me, that was the instant sign of a Griswold. So I took a look at this thing, and and I asked how much. $5. So yeah, you better believe I grabbed it and I cleaned it up, and it turned out to be this. I thought perhaps Griswold might have made it for this company, but I was told by the folks on Facebook here that in fact this is Canadian made, which is unusual because it does have the handle shape of a Griswold. It's possible maybe they used a Griswold pattern for it or a mold perhaps, but nonetheless, this thing is also thicker and heavier than a Griswold. So, um, and I have not been able to fairly date this either. Can only guess because it's a round bottom and it's very well made. I would probably estimate this to be about middle 20th century or so, 1940s, 1950s, maybe even 1960s. That would be my guess as to what this is. But yeah, this is thick and heavy. It's a really nice cast iron pan too. So yeah, so this indeed was a good score, and it's one that I certainly don't regret. Unfortunately, as I said, I'm sorry to say I still don't have a lot of information about the T. Eaton Company, other than I understand it was a very popular department store or hardware company in Canada. But that's really about I know. Mudbrooker. Eaton was a department store. They contracted several Canadian manufacturers to make their skillets, McClary, Smart, and others. Well, there we go. So yes, it is definite. Thank you, Mudbrooker. And yes, that was definitely Canadian made. I mean, it was pointed out with that. Yes. Uh, Still, the fact that it has the size number that looks exactly like a Griswold number 8, I can't help wondering if maybe they did borrow from that pan from Griswold, perhaps. Either way, though, it's a pan that pretty much anybody would be proud to own. So your camera is just a little low, or take a step backwards. Oh well. Oh, Scott Balneves. Hey, been watching you since the baked beans and brisket video. As a cast iron aficionado, I want to say keep up the great work. Well, thank you very much. I'm not specifically asking for donations, but thank you very much. I'm very, very flattered and very much appreciate it. Um, so thank you, Scott Bereaves. But anyway, and what does that say here? It says here, where was that? Do you have any of the small ashtray looking pieces? I use them for melted butter all the time. Yeah, I think I could say I have one or two of them. Here's one or two. Here's 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think I could say I have a few of these ashtray skillets here. Rather than just simply show them up like this, I guess I should try to be a little bit more organized. So let's see what we have right now. All right. This is an interesting one because it's completely blank. This one, in fact, had some paint or something on it, and I stripped it off completely in the lye tank. It has the shape that suggests that this could be by either Lodge or Wagner. But because it's completely blank and unmarked, I have no clue as to who might have made it. It's also rather rough. It's got like a little flaw or something, wrinkle in the surface here. You see the part that looks like a crack, but it's not a crack. So this probably was pretty cheaply made. And then from here, what else do we have? Here's a Lodge uh, ashtray skillet. And this particular Lodge logo, I'm told that Lodge actually made these for decades. This could very well be anywhere from the 1930s, perhaps all the way to the 1960s or so. So I have no real clue as to how old this particular Lodge ashtray is, although it does happen to look its shape almost happens to look almost exactly like this Wagner ashtray skillet, which this one here is from the probably from the 1960s or so, based on the Wagner ware logo. So, and yeah, you can see this thing's got a little flaw on it as well, this little dot or whatever it is, because again, ashtray skillets, well, they were usually cheaply made. These things here, of course, were meant really for advertising. They were sold to companies for advertisers. They were often sold at dirt cheap prices, maybe even given away for free. So yeah, they were all over the place in those days. um, I have two. Interestingly enough, the shape of these particular ones here generally suggests they were made by Martin Stove and Range, is because you can see they're very almost square shaped, very very deep, very round, and they're generally believed to be Martin. But both of these happen to say, one says Birmingham Stove and Range, and the other one says Atlanta Stoveworks. And in fact, I think this one might even be enameled. Very poor lighting, and I apologize for that. I'm trying to get a good angle on this here for you folks. Atlanta Stoveworks. All right. And yeah, they have absolutely nothing on the bottom. And I'm told that these particular ones were actually made by Martin Stove and Range. So either BSR contracted with Martin, or there must have been another reason for it. I do know that Martin actually bought BSR's stove division in the 1980s when both companies were pretty much reinventing themselves. So maybe they might actually date from there. And we've got a couple of advertiser skillets as well. These were definitely by BSR, especially this one with that has the BSR logo on it, Beham Stove and Range. And it's long, I mean, it has a very unique handle shape with this groove down the center. I remember seeing those things when I was very young, and people would often rest their cigarettes in this groove. And here's one from Massachusetts, from a very popular store in Massachusetts, Spags. Anybody who grew up in Massachusetts in, say, the up until about the 1970s to 1980s, they all remember Spags in Worcester. There are no bags at Spags. And moving right along. Let me see. Here are a couple of Lodge ashtray skillets as well. Yeah, managed to come across these at one time or another. Oh yeah, this one. That's right. This is actually an advertising piece for Bass Pro Shops, for that matter. Okay, so yeah, I definitely do have some advertising skillets. And like you said, I use them as butter melters as well. Once I even baked eggs in them. So William Hurt, they used to give away those ashtray skillets back in the 60s. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I know. These days, who would consider a piece made of iron as something that they would give away for free? And yet they did. Oh, that's what they said. They said step away from the camera or pull the camera up a little bit. Well, then let me loosen this a little and move the camera up a little bit and see if that helps. Anyway, um, she was on mud last evening, Pawpaw. Seemed fine. Appreciate your insight on your Martin ashtray skillets. I can't find any around my area. I happened to come across those. I got all of those dirt cheap in one way or another. I really did not go out of my way to get any of them. They just happened to be there. I mean, I scored that Spags advertising skillet for $5, for instance, and I'm very glad to have that. The Martin, well, no, that's not true. The Atlanta Stoveworks, I will admit, I got on eBay. And in fact, I got it as a threefer. Some seller on eBay was selling a set of three of those advertising skillets. That Atlanta Stoveworks was one of them. And I really decided to get it largely for that. So just because, well, yeah, I admit that's kind of like because I wanted it for my collection. Yes. Good for mini quiches, not the word I'm looking for. What's the egg dish you start on your stove and finish in the oven? Are you talking about a frittata, perhaps? Ah, more wine. Yeah, exactly. The camera angle is great. Well, thank you very much. Okay. All right, definitely have to remember that. So, and thank you so much for showing off. Well, thank you, Greg Hart, as well. And yeah, that's why, as I said, we some time ago we decided that the first Cast Iron Wednesday of the month we would do one of these Q&A sessions, and we do some talking about cast iron. We'll get more back to cooking next week. So, and probably next week, I think I will finally get down to doing those spiral potatoes that I promised about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Hmm. Could be a Dutch baby egg dish. Well, that's certainly one thing. Yeah, that might be it. The Dutch baby. That's probably better than a frittata in an ashtray skillet. So I will not disagree with you. A 38-inch pan would be something. Yeah, that would be interesting. Three 8-inch pans make great personal pan pizzas. Oh, yeah, that's what you meant. I have 38-inch pans. Not really special things, but they make great personal pan pizzas. That's somewhere over the rainbow. Mud, you had a really good show last night, even if Cynthia won. Well, congratulations, Cynthia. I understand you got yourself an aluminum tea kettle or kettle, I believe. So congratulations on that. And going back, the handle looks like a Griswold handle, Louis J. Cast Iron Cooking. Yeah, that's what I thought as well. I'm just seeing if I've missed any questions here. I really enjoy my 12-inch Victoria cast iron skillet. Yeah, yeah, you have got an amazing collection, Louis, and I am flabbergasted as well at how you can have so much brand new modern day cast iron. But that's probably a subject that probably should not be discussed in public, so I'm not about to. Other than that, you have an amazing collection, and I can only hope you're doing your best to get a lot of use out of it. Okay, going from there. How much cake did you? Cake. How much cake did you eat this past week? I had two pieces, and it was not easy, that's for sure. I had one piece pretty much the night after I decorated the cakes, and I spent the last few days trying to get rid of as much of this cake as I could. I gave one whole cake, in fact, to my neighbors across the street, and I gave it about half of a cake away. That was where that picture I posted, you saw the one where I actually set up a table in my driveway and I put that sign on the table, help, I need to get rid of this cake before I eat it myself. And I managed to give away about half of a cake like that. So I ended up only eating about two pieces of cake. So that's not doing too badly. Also pleased to say that despite having those two pieces of cake, I have not had a massive sugar crash. I remember there was this incident about a year ago, in fact, when I did have some chocolate or cake. Oh, that's it. I'm some of my cookies, some of my homemade cookies. I ate some of my homemade cookies, and they gave me this incredible sugar crash, the kind that I actually felt nauseous from. But it hasn't happened again since. And it's been years since I've had a sugar crash like that. So I think I could safely say I don't have some kind of health problem from it. That was just, it appeared to be just like an exceptional circumstance. I've had sweet things since then, and I do not seem to be having any problem with that. Christmas, the story of the welded handle will be told. Oh, that sounds interesting. Oh yeah, the pins. Yeah. Um, Okay, well, the racks. I've had these racks here for about the past 3 years or so. When I moved into my previous apartment in Massachusetts, at that time I made the expense and got one huge 6 shelf rack. And that's the one that I've been showing in all my videos all of this time. I had a lot less limited space there than I have here. I have a lot more space here, yay, than I think I've ever had, and I'm very much enjoying it. And it was for that reason that I was able to actually expand these racks over in this over across here. However, again, these racks only go up so high, unfortunately. And so I had to figure out how was I going to, what can I do with all this space up here? And I finally got the idea of making this, doing this little piece here and hanging up some of the more impressive or photogenic pans as well. I could not get these things to stand up straight, not until I finally put this bracer on the top. So yeah, cast iron is heavy, and building cast iron racks is not easy, as I found out. But I only managed to do it. And yeah, it's largely because of that I've been able to rearrange my rack now so that just about all of my most regularly used pieces are now within easy reach, so that I don't have to go digging all the way back here, clang, 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 to get a pan that I would use every day. I mean, I can reach easily for my redneck pan, my lodge pan, my BSR number 8, for instance. Right here is the Wagner chicken fryer. Here is the Wagner aluminum Dutch oven. Here's the Griswold number 10. Here's the Lady Liberty skillet that I got last year and I'm quite proud of. And here is the favorite number 8 that was a present from Louis J. Cast Iron Cooking here. So for that matter, Louis, and thank you very much again for these donations, Louis, and I'm doing my best to get the use out of them. It was thanks to him that I now also have a field number 8, and especially the butter pat number 5 pan that, as you know, has happens to have my name on it. And yeah, it was not engraved for me. Rather, they actually have a model of this pan, and they call it the Eric. So they have a whole bunch of pans with this particular name on the handle. So, so thank you once again for that, Louis. Anyway, and yeah, I've been the rack really has been just falling into place, so to speak, which is why I've got all my modern day cast iron set up here on the front. And only within the last week or so, I finally managed to hang up those Star Wars skillets here on the bottom here so that they can also be easily displayed. So little by little, and actually, in fact, you can't see it now, so I've got to turn this down again one more time. Here on the bottom shelf here are the Star Wars skillets. Darth Vader, BB-8, Boba Fett, and what's his name? Grogu, or Baby Yoda, as they call him. All right, now I'll put this back up here again because you folks like that. Okay. Have you ever seen the Swedish and Finnish cast iron pans? They have their own really old brand and seem to have a unique design language. Brands like Skepschult and Fiskars Norden. I've heard of Skepschult, and I've seen one or two of their pans even here in the US. Not very often. In fact, more than anything else, I have occasionally seen their Abelskever pans. But no, that's not true. I've also seen their, what do you call those cookie pans that are made in Norway? Those really elaborate cookie skillets, the ones that are like waffle irons. The name of it is just going over my head. Yeah, the Darth Vader one is clutch. Hit. That's it. The how do you pronounce it? Krumkaki? Krumcake? One of those. But yeah, that's the one. That is probably what I've seen more often than anything else, other than that and the Abelskever pans from Skipschult. I can't even pronounce it right, can I? The Star Wars skillets, yeah. I mean, we're getting into the holiday season again. Oh, God. which means probably by Thanksgiving, especially since I gather these things have been selling pretty well, we will be seeing more Star Wars skillets at Walmart and Target as well. Darth Vader has been out since the first year they've done this. And in fact, this is going to be year number 4 of the Star Wars skillets. They've been doing them every year for the past 3 years. The first year, so if it's been 3 years, then that's 2021 and 22. So in other words, they started in 2020. The first year, they had Darth Vader and they had BB-8. And poor BB-8's getting a little bit of rust. I have to clean him up, in fact, I'm sorry to say. I don't think BB-8 sold very well because I believe he was discontinued after that first year. Probably because, unfortunately, the Disney Star Wars movies, well, I'm not going to talk about that, even though I still love 2 out of 3 of them. Darth Vader has been showing up every year, though. The second year that they did those Star Wars skillets, they did Darth Vader. And then that was when they first introduced Baby Yoda from The Mandalorian. And this was also a big bestseller. So as a result, last year, both of these pans were re-released. And that was when the third pan came out last year. And that was Boba Fett. And well, now that we've got another year coming out, who knows if there's going to be yet another Star Wars pan this Christmas. But nonetheless, these pans were selling at Walmart for like $6, but last year the price jumped. Last year, these things were selling for about $8. So you can expect that this year it might still be $8, or they might hike the price again, and you may end up paying, I don't know, $10 or so for this. Who knows? If you already own one of these, well, there you go. Especially since I believe I thought some of these had a year on them, but apparently they don't. So Darth Vader is probably going to always be a bestseller because Darth Vader. So you'll probably be able to see him again, and you'll almost certainly be able to pick up a Darth Vader pan this Christmas as well. Have you cooked in your Star Wars pan? What have you cooked? Yes, I have, in fact. I've made eggs. I've made pancakes. I've tried making those terrible cookies that they initially came out with the first year, and those cookies were awful. But apparently they realized that because for the past 2 years, those Star Wars pans came with pancake mix instead of cookie mix. And the pancake mix isn't bad. So you can also make better pancakes than you can cookies. You can make pancakes that actually look like the Star Wars characters. So in that respect, it's not bad. Yeah, so yeah, if you want to have fun, especially with your kids, you can indeed make pancakes in these Star Wars skillets. That's probably the best thing to use them for as well. Why aren't you blaming Mud? He started it. Okay. I'm surprised there isn't an R2D2 and a C3PO yet. That is surprising. I can only guess. That's probably why they came out with BB-8, because BB-8 again. They tried to really push him with the with the last trilogy of Star Wars movies, and now, as I said, since the last trilogy of Star Wars movies may not, unfortunately, last forever, it seems like. Who knows? Maybe this year they might bring back R2D2 and C3PO. And here, I do not know. Have R2D2 and C3PO shown up in the Star Wars TV series? If they have, then maybe they will show up here in these cast iron pans. R2 and C3 seem to be the obvious choice. Oh, the explanation of what a prison pan is. Oh, yes. Well, I guess there must have been a discussion that going on besides what I've been blabbing on about, and nothing wrong with that. I've encouraged people to have discussions about that. But yeah, prison pans. That, of course, would be pans that were allegedly made with prison workers. And either it is true that a number of the early cast iron foundries from the 1800s and 1900s would often contract with prisons to rent out their, their prison workers dirt cheap. So yeah, there's some morality problems with that, because I guess you could almost say it was kind of like a form of slave labor. I'm not going to get into that because number one, that all happened more than a century ago, and there's nothing we can do about it now. It's history. And number two, there aren't really a lot of records of it either. So I really can't even say much about that. But nonetheless, that was on one hand that a lot of those foundries did in fact use prison workers is to make cheap labor in their foundries. There are also reports, and I don't think any of these have been absolutely verified yet, that at least one or two prisons actually had their own foundries for making cast iron pans. But that's debatable because building a foundry, while it wasn't really that difficult, I would think it would be very hard to manage because, of course, it is a very high risk situation. So I really don't know whether that's true or not. Nonetheless, it's been said at one time or another about just about all of the unknown early 20th century pans that they were allegedly made with prison labor. It's been said about that for the ugly hammered pans. It's been said about that for the Southern mystery skillets. But of course, nobody has found any records to verify if in fact these pans were made by prison labor. There is an interesting case that appears to have been solved only within the last year or so, and Mudbrooker might know about this one. The number 16 skillet. Every once in a while, we've seen in play. I saw one myself, in fact, at an antique mall in Virginia. There is this unknown gigantic cast iron skillet. The thing is huge. It weighs 30 pounds. This thing is a monster. And it has a number 16 size number on it. And of course, nobody really knew where it came from because, it was unmarked. So nobody really knew the origin of it. And that meant for some people, automatically, they assumed it was a prison pan. It was made by prison labor. However, with that particular pan, finally, only within the last year or two, they found a specimen of that pan that actually did have the manufacturer on it. And I think it was like a manufacturer in, I don't know, like Chattanooga, something like that. I have the record of it on my website. And furthermore, I did a short video about it. Look on my YouTube shorts somewhere within the last couple of months. I've made a lot of shorts. I don't remember. I did a video, in fact, on unknown cast iron pans, a short video, only about a minute long. And that's where I did actually put an example of that number 16 cast iron skillet. So that at least is proven to be that no, it was not made with prison labor. The prison labor thing, and then I'll shut up about this. It's a touchy subject. I can't really get into it because it's another subject that I know very little about. I don't know a lot about European foundries. I don't know a lot about Canadian foundries. I also don't know a lot about prison foundries. So, especially because I don't know a lot about it, I really can't get into that subject. The morality is also iffy. And that's another thing that I really don't feel like getting into either. So, on the other hand, I feel, especially because it cannot be proven, I do not feel any guilt at all about collecting and using unknown cast iron pans. The ugly hammered pans, the Southern mystery skillets, would not shy from those. Those are wonderful, great, useful, made in the USA cast iron pans. They work great. And maybe there's a possibility they were made with prison labor. Oh, well, that's not enough for me to make me shy away from it. It's not like the same as something that absolutely has bad blood on it, like World War II memorabilia and the Nazi collectors markets, things like that, which I also won't get into either. So, but it's nowhere near like that. At this point, it's really not much more than an urban legend with cast iron collecting because, again, we don't have a lot of evidence for it. We don't have a lot of records for it. And I'm not going to get into theories about that to the point where I would say, throw that pan away. It's evil. It was made with blood on its hands. I'm a long way from getting into something like that. Okay, I've said enough. KCB 5150. I passed on an ugly hammered cast iron chicken fryer for like a month ago, actually, but it was more because the seasoning was so rancid it had me heaving. Ew. Hey, sorry to hear that. Technically, I mean, if you had a lye tank, you could really clean up just about anything with it. Maybe that might help, but I'm sorry to hear that as well. Because those ugly hammered pans are actually really good pans. I had a set of 3 of them myself. They were thick, heavy. They were great to use. I ended up giving away that set during a YouTube live here. In fact, I had a giveaway contest, and the prize was a set of all 3 of those ugly hammered pans. And I don't regret doing it because I've got this collection. I could afford to give those things away, so I didn't mind it. All right, it was unbelievably rancid bacon grease. Well, okay. I mean, again, after all, nobody's forcing you to get it. So, yeah, you didn't feel like stripping it. Rick and I are busy today, so I'll talk to you all later. Have a blessed day. Well, I've been rambling on and on. How long? For about an hour and 10 minutes already. These things usually seem to last about an hour and a half or so. So, I probably won't be much longer anyway, especially since, it is a hot night, as I mentioned already. The temperature here in my living room is now down to 84 degrees when it was 85 degrees when this thing started. So, yeah. Yeah, we're having a heat wave here in New York as well. Although that heat wave is going to break tomorrow night. Then we're going to have 3 days of rain. So I guess we should enjoy this heat while we can. That's the best word I can say there. What do you use for sacrificial metal in your e-tank? Okay, here's the thing. And actually, I've actually gotten some people mad at me for doing this. I use Asian made cast iron pans because, especially recently at the flea market, I've managed to actually score a couple of those things dirt cheap. It's like I honestly got a set of 3 number 3 size Asian made skillets for like about, in fact, it was 3 for $1. I paid $1 for 3 of them. And that makes a perfect sacrificial piece for my e-tank. So I don't have a problem with that. That's really cheap enough that I can afford to dispose of a cast iron pan like that. And yet, I remember I've actually gotten some criticism for it because it's cast iron. And why would I destroy a cast iron pan even in that respect? I did it because I chose to, because I didn't feel that, because I felt, as I said, I didn't have a lot of use for it, and I don't see why not. That's comes down to the argument. It's your cast iron, and you can do what you want with it. So, what do I use for sacrificial metal in my e-tank? I use old cast iron. At least one time, a couple of years ago, I found this really heavy piece of broken cast iron plumbing pipe that I also used in my e-tank. Um, I know about the arguments about using stainless steel and hexavalent chromium and all that. I've heard all too much about that. And that's one reason why I will try not to use stainless steel in my e-tank. I don't know if it is genuine or not because I've got other e-tank experts who will say that the chances of of producing hexavalent chromium in any significant amount in a typical small E-tank are not very great. Well, even so, as I said, I've got other kinds of disposable pieces, such as old pieces of cast iron, and so I might as well go with that instead. Though, now that I'm mentioning that, let me get this thing that I found, and I think I showed this last month as well. And I might actually be having regrets about this. Yes, regrets. And that is, oh man, well, now that I'm picking this up, maybe I'm not having regrets. Remember this? I showed this off last week. My so-called Anvil. Holy cow, this thing's heavy. This thing weighs 30 pounds. So, well, I, uh, uh, it was pointed out that this thing here was probably not made as an anvil. It was, in fact, probably a piece of railroad track or maybe a steel girder that they actually managed to cut into the shape of an anvil. Here, let me pick it up again because I'm a masochist. Ugh, holy cow! Ugh. But what I realize I have to do on this thing is the ball bearing test. And anybody who knows anvils, you know what a ball bearing test is. Ugh. Because the whole point of an anvil, well, it's supposed to be thick and heavy, of course, but an anvil is also supposed to be able to reflect back up, reflect the force of the blow back up so that you can get a really good, you can get a lot of really good hammering out of it that way. And so what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take a ball bearing, drop it on the anvil. And if the anvil is well made, that ball bearing is going to bounce like a rubber ball. A poorly made anvil, it won't bounce. A well-made anvil, the ball bearing will bounce. Well, I need to get myself a ball bearing and test that thing because even though that thing was probably made from a railroad track or a steel girder, if the ball bearing still bounces, then I'll be happy. And that means I'll still have myself a nice anvil, even if it's an unusual anvil. If it doesn't bounce, well then I've got a poorly made anvil. So of course I got that thing because I wanted an anvil. So who knows? Anyway, railroad anvils are quite common. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean, William Hurt. That's probably where that came from. So forged versus cast anvils is a debate that starts fights. Well, I would think that you would have to have forged anvils because isn't that the whole point? I mean, that's the reason why you can't have a cast iron anvil. If you beat that thing enough, it's going to crack, it's going to break. And so what's the point of it? I mean, that's why, of course, a good anvil has to be pliable and it has to be flexible so that you can keep beating on that thing and it'll work just fine. I made an anvil out of a piece of rail. I have a piece of railroad track that my family used to crack walnuts. Track is hard stuff. Can you cook on an anvil? Well, I'm sure you could. I don't see why not. Just heat that thing up to the right temperature and you could probably fry anything on it. Fry an egg, fry a steak. Why not? I'd like to stomp my foot on that. Yeah, I know. So but so anyway, I've got to get myself a ball bearing and do the ball bearing test on this railroad track anvil and see whether or not it was worth it. I mean, if it's a poorly made anvil, well, I don't know because after all, I'm not exactly going to be doing a lot of hammering on it. I got the anvil because I wanted an anvil. But I have no doubt, though, that there will be circumstances where having a nice hard surface like that to beat on is probably a good thing. That's the whole point of anvils, of course. There are uses for it. All right. I would love to see you fry an egg on that anvil. Yeah, I'm betting I could. I don't think it would be that difficult. However, I still have to clean this thing up yet. It still has a layer of gunk and even some surface rust on it. So I definitely need to clean this thing up before I cook on it. Long as you don't screw up anvil for Morris. Cast steel, a lot of times they would have a forged insert on top. All right, let's see. Moving right along. that anvil will be fine for whatever you need it for. Well, that's what I hope anyway. I mean, as I said, I admit I got the anvil because I wanted an anvil, but there are uses for an anvil more than just a doorstop, and I'm looking forward to having a chance to use it too. All right. What else do we have here? Would oven off, remove paint. I just got a trivet that turned out to be painted. Easy off, yes, it would, because it's lye. Easy off is essentially lye. And I have soaked paint covered things in my lye tank, and they turned out great. So in general, I would say yes. Quite frankly, I would be in favor of you making a lye tank, because in the long run, it's a lot easier to use, a lot easier to take care of, and I think it works better than the easy off in a trash bag. The easy off in a trash bag works okay. The lye tank works a lot better. A couple of years ago, here's a story. A couple of years ago, I found a trivet as well that I gave to my friends as a present because it had a nice design on it that I knew they would appreciate. And I thought that that trivet was covered with gold paint. I dropped it in my lye tank for a month or so and took it out, and it turned out it was a brass trivet. The lye tank had stripped off all of the gunk and everything, and I had a beautiful brass trivet. So that was a really nice bonus, and I was proud to give it to my friends as a present. So who knows? Maybe you'll be lucky too. I also found out that way too that brass works great in a lye tank, and a lye tank will not hurt brass for whatever that's worth. Those are some cool words. They sound so medieval, they sound so archaic. Brass and bronze, those two types of metals. And yeah, I know before steel came around, they were probably the most common types of metals, even maybe even more than iron. But I mean, those are just really such great words to say. Brass, something about it just, it's got a metallic sound to it. Or bronze, I love those words. Anyway, okay, what else do we have here? Poor thing, he never won. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Mrs. Roadrunner hits Coyote. Yes, exactly. So old anvils go for around $800 to $900 around here. Yeah, I had heard there used to be a general rate of about $1 per pound for an anvil. But I suspect, like everything else, that price is probably skyrocketed, which is why I feel like I got a good deal when I bought this 30-pound anvil here. How much did I say I paid for it? $50, I think. I don't remember. Anyway, um, so yeah, especially because of that, I definitely better find some use for this thing. I really don't want to say that I paid that money for that anvil and just have a doorstop. When are you going to bounce those bearings? Yeah, exactly. I need to get some. That's just it. I don't have ball bearings on me at the moment. So I should really take a trip to Harbor Freight Tools or something, pick up a few ball bearings and see what happens. Coyote ought to still have a headache. What did I see here? The trash bag is the apartment solution. Well, there is that, yes. If you live in a small apartment like I did for all those years, you may not have the room to build yourself a whole lye tank, and I certainly understand that. Of course, we all do what we have to. But if you have room for a trash bag, maybe you could at least get a Home Depot bucket and make a live bucket from that. So maybe I might suggest it that way, that perhaps. All right. Old anvils I've seen are more than $3 a pound, several $100s. Yeah, exactly. So well, I'm definitely gonna. I should really make it a project, I think, to look into cleaning up this anvil and testing it this weekend. So I might that might give me something to do on Saturday. All right, couple more questions, and I'd say we're probably getting into that time as well, especially since I've been talking about anvils and enjoying it, but we haven't said too much more about cast iron yet, so let's see what else we have. Speaking of brass, did you see that lead safe, Mama? Oh God, about the brass bits on the Finex cast iron being full of lead. I've heard of that, and I am doubtful as well. Considering that they're definitely modern made, you would think that any modern day manufacturer would not have a reason to put lead into their castings. So I won't believe it until I see some definite proof. And I've said before, and I will go on record in saying this about that certain lead safe mama, whose full name I won't mention, that I do not trust her as a verifiable source of information because she's biased. Because, I mean, her website is full of links to her own website. And yes, I know that she plays with an X-ray gun all the time. I don't feel that there's enough uh, verifiable evidence on her website to really use her as an authentic source. And I'm going to go with that, and that's it, because I don't want to get in trouble. I'm being honest. I don't like it. I don't like her. I'll say that, yes. But that's all I think I should really say. Okay. All right, I've seen only one of those. What is ugly hammered? Okay, ugly hammered. That is easy. Yeah, ugly hammered is just what we call the particular hammered pattern. Yeah, that's true. There is a certain kind of hammered cast iron pan. Those cast iron pans with that wonderful hammered design on them. You know, the dented surface that looks like it's been beaten with a hammer. Do I have a hammered pan on me right now? You know, I don't think I have a hammered pan on me right now. Damn it. All right. Well, look for pictures. Look for Chicago Hardware Foundry, for instance. Wagner made some hammered pans. Lodge made some hammered pans. They all had this beautiful hammered design on the surface. And in the midst of all this, every once in a while, you find an unknown pan that has a very crude look to it. It doesn't look anywhere near as fancy as the Chicago Hardware Foundry. It honestly looks like somebody took a hammer and beat that thing and put dents all over it. And nobody knows who made those pans. And because of that, they're called ugly hammered pans, not because they're ugly. People love those pans. I love those pans, but because they have a rather crude and unsophisticated look to them. And so it's one of those names that just stuck. And so they just call them ugly hammered pans. You know how in the smoking and grilling world, of course, they've got what they call the ugly drum smoker. That's the one that you make out of a steel barrel. You make a homemade smoker from it, and they call it the UDS, the ugly drum smoker. It's in that same way that we have ugly hammered pans, that they're not ugly, but that's the best way we describe them. So, and they're great to use. There's even a Facebook group especially devoted to ugly hammered pans. So if you've got yourself an ugly hammered pan in your collection, good. There's nothing to be ashamed about. Don't hide away. Show it off, and you will get a lot of praise for it because those are some great pans. So those are ugly hammered pans. I think the lead in brass is grandstanding. With all the espresso shots I pulled out of my old Pavone with the brass tank and group head, I should be walking into walls. Yeah, who knows? Um, CHF looks like a honeycomb, looks like honeycombs. Yes, exactly. So, yes, each of those brands had their own designs for their hammered pans, so that you can tell a Chicago Hardware Foundry hammered pan versus, say, a Lodge hammered pan or even a Griswold hammered pan. And Chicago Hardware Foundry is generally considered the top of the heap, probably both the most common and I guess you could say the most attractive of the hammered pans. The ugly hammered pans, well, just from their name, I don't think they're considered quite as attractive, but they're great cast iron pans. They're wonderful to use. So I've got no complaints about that as well. You're running out of time. Oh, my grill. Yeah, tell me about it. Sheesh. It's been so crazy. I've still got that grill sitting in the box. Oh. Well, that's yet another project I'm going to have to do, setting up that grill. Lodge hammered is good looking too. Yes, it is. Yeah, hammered pans, I mean, they're really, really attractive. I mean, there's no denying that. I personally think that they were inspired by the Art Deco period. Because I mean, anybody who knows anything about Art Deco designs from that period, that hammered design definitely fits into it. So it is something that would fit in the Art Deco in an Art Deco kitchen. All right, Val's Black Cat's rules. I've worked in an old print shop for years, and we used lead all the time. I was tested for lead when I was pregnant and didn't even show any level of lead. Well, yeah, lead is a very real and serious concern. And if you take precautions, in general, it's possible to be safe around lead. I mean, that's why lead isn't, lead is not banned as a hazardous substance in most instances, in that you can still get lead. You can still get lead weights at Walmart, for instance. Um, it's discouraged because it's well known that lead poisoning is not a good thing. But you can handle lead in your hands. It's not going to instantly poison you. You're not going to get cancer or anything by holding lead in your hands. Um, on the other hand, of course, as we know, enamel cast iron pans from the 1800s, I would not buy them for that reason. That it is well known that quite a lot of them had lead in the enamel glaze. And I would not want to cook in one of those pans for that reason. There's another good reason not to cook in enamel cast iron from the 1800s as well. It's probably going to shatter. Those things are over 100 years old. And if you get one of those, you are almost guaranteed to see that the enamel is cracked, it's crazed, and again, it's almost certain to shatter if you try cooking with it. So both of those reasons are good reasons to avoid enamel cast iron from the 19th century. The question has come up as to whether Griswold enamel has lead in it. And the answer, I don't know. I've looked on the Griswold groups for proof as to whether or not there was lead in Griswold enamel. And that's one of those subjects that people seem to shy away from. I seem to get the impression that enamelware makers in the US generally removed lead from their enamels somewhere during the early 20th century. But I haven't been able to find any verifiable records about that. But it seems to be generally assumed, for whatever that's worth, which may suggest that enamel Griswold cast iron is probably safe. And I'm saying probably because I don't know. I don't know enough about that. What I do know is granite ware in particular. Anybody who knows granite ware, that's those speckled enameled steel pots. They've been around for almost a century or so. Right from the beginning, granite ware used an enamel process that did not have lead in it. And in their earliest days, they actually marketed it as that. They pointed out, they called themselves poison free because there was no lead in their enamel. So thumbs up to graniteware for that. But that's also a demonstration of how, even in those days, people did know that lead in enamel cast iron was not a good thing. So that is a subject as well that not just me, but our whole hobby probably really needs to do more research on lead in old enamel cast iron. Verifiable sources, not lead safe mama, but verifiable sources, so that we can at least have some more information to go on. And having said all that, we're going past 9:30 now, so enamel gets harder and harder over time. You see them hairline cracks. I have my mom's and grandma's granite ware roasting pans. Use them with pride. Lead tests can check for that easily. Yeah, but it's not guaranteed. So it's hard to say. Um, okay. Anyway, yeah, I want to get an enamel Le Creuset. Yeah, the impression is that Le Creuset is in fact lead free. So I'm not worried about that. The question they talk about is cadmium on the outside glaze, not the inside, but the outside. And that is another subject that, we should probably really get into this another time because again, it's getting past 9:30 now. So, phew, wow. Anyway, I'm gonna have to rewatch. Well, I'm glad you liked that then, Val. But yeah, as I said, I mean, this is something we could keep talking about, but again, we're getting late and it's a heavy topic and it's hot out, and a lot of us have to go to bed because it is a Wednesday night, Cast Iron Wednesday. And yeah, a lot of us do have to work in the morning, including me. And I can't be up here all night, unfortunately. So we're probably going to have to call this a night. But there we go. Had another nice Q&A session here with the rack. I tend to do this on the first Cast Iron Wednesday of every month because it's a lot of fun. Next week, I hope to get back into some cooking. I promised you folks some deep fried spiral potatoes. Let's see if we can try making that happen next Wednesday and see what happens. Oh, there's another deep fried thing that I only recently learned about, and I think I want to give this a try. How many folks here have heard of city chicken? Namely, this was imitation chicken made from pork and veal. And this was in the early 20th century or so, in the days before chicken was a common everyday dish. City chicken. I only learned about it recently. And that's something I think we should really give it a try. So, considering all of that, well, maybe I can aim for doing this next week, and we will go from there. That means next week we may very well have ourselves a deep frying extravaganza, which I think is a good excuse to bring out the Lodge fish fryer, because there is a good deep fryer, and I think we'll go from there. Oh, one other thing. Monday is September 11th. And each year, for the past few years, it seems like I've had it on my mind to do a live video and do a discussion about, yes, about September 11th, 2001. I've done this for the last few years, and I've actually found it, I shouldn't say fun, but I've actually had some nice conversations on that. And so this coming Monday, probably Monday evening, I think I'm probably going to set up a live cooking session for people to come in and reminisce about September 11th. With the understanding, this is not some kind of a political argument. This is more of a discussion because there's a lot of things to talk about, like your stories, like my stories of what happened on that day, for instance. And I've been doing this on September 11th for the past few years, and I'll probably be doing it again on Monday. And hopefully it'll be a nice evening for that. It's not going to be as long as this either. It's going to be a much shorter time, maybe half an hour or so, who knows. But anyway, that's something for Monday. But other than that, of course, there's always September. September. There's always next Wednesday. Oh, and now we've got a week to start looking forward to it. So yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. KCB 5150. Yeah, it's things like that I find like talking about on that day, for instance. But for now, anyway, I'd say we'll probably head out and we will enjoy ourselves and we'll all have a good evening. And I can only thank you, everybody, once again for showing up. And I hope I do my best to entertain you folks with all this talking and talking and talking. But I do try to be entertaining, and you folks here are what make this a lot of fun for me. I have a lot of fun doing these Cast Iron Wednesdays, and it's largely because I get to talk to you folks and to cook for you folks. So thank you very much for being here. And thank you to everybody. To Kimberly Miller and Chris McGee, Cynthia Wesley, Beth Button, KCB 5150, Pat Z, and CE Nums, and so many others. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've learned a lot from these as well. It's not like me preaching to you. As you see, there's a lot of things I don't know either, and I'm more than happy to learn from you folks. So thank you very much for all of that. And especially thank you for everybody. And we will just have to go and do this all over again next week. So I guess we'll be signing off for now. So everybody, have yourselves a good evening. Thank you so much for coming by. And we'll see you next Wednesday.